Hi, so welcome to the mailbox. Straight into the first message, which was this one. We know what a mailbox episode means. You don't need to define that, blah, blah, blah. All right, then, let's get straight into it. So another little message I had on the WoW Flash from Friday was I want to see this comedy wipe. So basically, I caused a small wipe on Mythic Kil'Jaeden on Thursday. Could have happened to anyone. Naturally, it happened to me. Because I'm streaming, someone very thoughtfully decided to clip it. And so, yes, I did say I would show it to people, and the mailbox seemed to be the best place to show it to people. So I'll show it here. I can't show it with any sound. I will put a link to the clip down below. So basically what happened was, on Mythic Kil'Jaeden, you have to, when your reflection dies, you get like orbs going out in all directions, radially out from you. So you have to, and you have to sort of back off so you don't die to your own orbs, but also to give gaps in them to create a spiral of orbs rather than just a load of orbs that are just going to kill everyone else. Now, what I'm supposed to do is to go back into the corner, but I cocked that bit up, so I was shuffling back, ran out of edge, but didn't really see the edge properly because of all the effects, and went off it, so I died. That was my fault. That was really stupid. Completely my fault. Unfortunately, what then happened, I was busy face palming, because I really couldn't believe it. I was so stupid. And by the way, there's two reasons why I can't show you the audio on that on here, but you have to see on the link. One is because I use fairly ill-advised language. We know what YouTube's like at the moment. Also, there's music playing in the background, and again, we know what YouTube are like about that. So, someone rezzed me. Now, normally that would be fine. You'd go to yourself, okay, you'd check that it's safe. If it's safe, click that you accept the res. Unfortunately, and this has been happening very recently, something is making me auto-accept reses and summons. And I had no idea what. Couldn't work it out. No idea. Went through options and all the add-ons I use, couldn't find any option for it. So, long story short, it auto-resed me just before a singularity landed. But I don't even know I've been resed. You know, I'm like, and get the res, and oh, someone's resed me, and I'm about to get my mouse and keyboard back under, and then the singularity lands, and back off I go, and I'm just like, what? What's just happened? So then I have to explain to everyone else, and it's all, you only get one side of the conversation, by the way, because as people who watch me stream will know, I have to cut out, you don't hear the other people in Discord, because they sometimes say things that will get me banned on Twitch, so I can't let you listen to them. So you only ever hear half a conversation anyway. And but thankfully I've now done it. I was talking about this on the stream yesterday. Someone very helpfully told me which add-on it is, and ironically it's an add-on I have installed but I don't use it. I think it's someone actually suggested an add-on, and I went, all right, I'll install it and give it a go sometime, and then forgot all about it. And sure enough, there's options in there to auto-accept reses and summons, as well as other things. So they've been unticked now. Completely, everything's gone on that. So it shouldn't be a problem anymore. So yes, that's the story of that one. So on to some other ones before we get onto the YouTube comments proper. So there's a one on Twitter. Someone linked last night a Wowhead article about the sub races. You may already have seen this. I've done a video on it now. It says, could you do a video on this theory? Which I have done. So that's out there now. But I have to say, I am pretty excited for the idea of sub races, because it's what I've been talking about for, like, not constantly, obviously, but it's what I first brought up before Legion even launched as being what I would like to see as the future direction, because we don't want new races. I always think people want customization of the characters. We don't get very much. World of Warcraft, I think, it was never impressive, the character customization at the start of World of Warcraft, but now it just looks badly dated. And even this wouldn't fix it, having the idea of sub races, but it's the obvious thing. We don't want more races with just as poor customization. It'd be much better to have sub races, wouldn't it? Also, you have more mess with racials. I mean, I would like to see them tackle racials. The racials that give some power benefit to the character, I would like them completely removed, and they'd just be cosmetic benefits. You know, like the one, you know, humans, extra reputation, some extra gold, some extra this, extra that, extra the other, but nothing that increases the power of your character directly. I mean, you could argue reputation is beneficial because you get there a day quicker than everyone else, don't you, usually, when you're doing a particular rep grind, let's say getting exalted, so you could get the infinite augment rune. But it's not really a thing in power, you just bought a few more augment runes anyway. But I would just like to see them basically cosmetic, or not at all, or just don't have racials, if that's going to be the situation. There's an actual message on YouTube. I get a few direct messages on YouTube, but this one, most of them are just very kind words of encouragement. This one was about a question about roleplay. It says, I'm curious, since you used to play Dungeons and Dragons, have you ever tried role-playing in an MMO? Figure it's simply not feasible in WoW since you're not going to find an RP server you can reliably mythic raid. I don't know. I think you do have decent guilds on them, but I don't know how it works in there. No, the answer to that is no, and I get this back. I don't go full-on roleplay. When I roleplay in a game, and it's the same in Dungeons and Dragons, I roleplay the character, but I don't always roleplay in the way that some people would think. Like, a lot of people's attitude seems to be in fantasy roleplay that you've got to roleplay it like you're a 12th century peasant or something. And I'm thinking, no, it's not, I don't do that. So I roleplay it as a modern person, still in that world and still with that character. But everything else is still, I use modern phrases and modern styles of speech and stuff like that as well. So I would sort of describe myself as a semi-role player. I like to sort of role play it. So I wouldn't actually like to try it with a full-on role-playing community, because they wouldn't like me at all. They wouldn't consider me role-playing. So on to the actual YouTube comments. So one comment here from today, when I was talking about World of Warcraft 2. I'm certain there'll be a Warcraft mobile RTS game in the next couple of years, which more likely feature integration into WoW. There's a couple of things in this. First of all, I am quite certain there would be a Warcraft mobile game at some point, and it may be the one they're working on now. We know they're working on a mobile game because they're advertising for people to work on it. And as yet, an unannounced mobile game, or game for the mobile platform, I think it's how it's phrased. So we know one's coming. We don't know which franchise it's for. It could be a StarCraft one, Diablo, Warcraft, whatever. Probably not Overwatch just yet. And it could well be a Warcraft one. I'd be disappointed. I mean, it's one of those things I wouldn't play because I don't play mobile games. And people might say, oh, well, you know, leave it for people who do. Fine, that's great. But I'm worried about what's the continuation for the PC. I'm only going to play games on the PC. That's it. Now, with it, a Warcraft mobile RTS, it may not be an RTS. It might be. But mobile, there are MMOs, full-blown MMOs on mobiles now. Some fairly sizable titles as well. And then says, which will more than likely feature integration into WoW. It could. That's a fear of mine, actually. That's my fear with the mobile thing. Not that they bring out a game for mobiles. I don't care about that. It's not for me, but, you know, whatever. It's the fact that it would feature integration into WoW, or into, you know, whatever comes next, into whatever I would want to play on the PC regarding Warcraft. That is my great fear. We already have elements of World of Warcraft that have mobile interaction, like, you know, with the order hall missions, sending out missions. We can send out missions on our mobile while we're at work. So certainly at various times where I needed to get missions sent out rapid fire, I do it in my breaks at work. So I can do that. Do you know what as well? The mobile app is better for equipping your characters as well. Like, if I want to put some equipment on a champion, I have to try and find where they all are. And they're all over the place. My bags are a mess. My bank's a mess. But on the app, I just click upgrade the character, and it tells me all of the champion equipment items I have that I could choose from. Doesn't matter where they are. I don't have to go hunting for them. Just shows me them all. Doesn't do that in game. So in some regards, the app has actually got better functionality for that than the game. And yes, I can absolutely see in World of Warcraft them expanding on that side of it, and, you know, creating, you know, put it in the app, and very slowly, before you know it, you're playing a lot of Warcraft on a mobile. That's a fear of mine. That is a big fear of mine. Next one. Here's a game. Take a shot whenever he says Warcraft. I'll give you another game. Take a shot whenever I say anything complimentary about gnomes. You'll be surprised how quickly you're able to give up drinking then. Next question. I would love a WoW 2 with action combat. Ironically, I was discussing this on my extra stream that I put on last night while I was playing an action combat MMO, Elder Scrolls Online. I mean, it's not a different philosophy with action scroll. I fully expect that if Blizzard did bring out another MMO, it wouldn't have to be a Warcraft MMO, by the way. It could be StarCraft based, whatever it happens to be. If they brought out another MMO, that it would be action combat. What we mean by action combat is you don't target something and then fire all your spells at it, or whatever. That, you know, you fire arrows or throw your spells or swing your sword, whatever gets in the way of it gets hit. So you're not clicking on something. That, I think, is the much more modern way of doing it. The reason why the targeting system ever exists in the first place is because of poor quality internet connections. When World of Warcraft first came out, we all had pretty rubbish internet. Some worse than others. So you'd have a situation where, you know, let's say you just fired a fireball and you didn't target anyone. You think the fireball's gone through the target you were aiming at, but the game doesn't. The game, as far as the game's concerned, that target is somewhere else. It's moved somewhere else. So the lag between what you're seeing on your screen and what the server thinks is happening, there's a bit of a disparity. It would become very frustrating. So to circumvent the whole problem, you had targets. So if the target moved a little bit, that was fine. You were firing at that target and as long as you were in line of sight and in range of it at the point at which the cast was completed, then it would hit it. That was all there was to it. And that's how the game works now. That's how it still works. You can't outrun a fireball, for example. It is going to hit you, even if you move out of range after it's been cast. So, but internet connections are a lot better now. So there's a much greater agreement between what the server thinks is going on and what we think is going on at the other end. And so action combat is technically feasible, and because it's a system that a lot of people prefer for obvious reasons, then you would think that's going to come in. There are some who don't. There was some people were saying in my stream last night that they actually prefer the targeting system still. So it might, you know, be disappointing for some people. But I think that if they did bring, you know, a new MMO for whatever franchise, I think it would have action combat. Next comment, again, sort of on this theme. WoW 2, a console game. We know it's going to happen eventually. I mean, I think it would, just because of the fact that getting the money. I don't think anyone can go to the people who decide whether to give the project a go-ahead or not purely for PC. I think it has to have. I think if you're going to do a big budget game now, you have to be able to say that it'll work on either the mobile platform or the console platform, because both of those are much bigger targets. Very few people have PCs that are good for gaming. Quite a lot of people have consoles though. You know, for the price of a console, you can't get a very good PC for gaming purposes. So I think, yeah, it's a much larger share of the market to go to something that's console. The downside for that is, again, I'll compare to Elder Scrolls Online, is the menu system is clearly designed for a console. Now, if Blizzard did something, and I think they would, because they do focus on details, they create the game that's the same in console and PC version, but they create a different menu system. Like, for example, I should be able to click on an area of the screen, right-click, and, you know, get various options in a little drop-down menu, instead of having to use keybinds to navigate through a system like you would with a console and a controller. You know, a system that can only work with a mouse and a keyboard, just put that into it. The game would still be the same, put that into it, and I'll be happy. I'd be absolutely fine with them designing it primarily for a console, as long as it's got all the expected PC functionality you would expect as well. And that would just have to be mapped onto it. That wouldn't need any major changes to the game development. Just map it on, and I'll be more than happy. Next one, it says, do you think instead of making WoW 2, Blizzard would think about making a new modern engine for WoW and just transfer database character amounts, achievements, blah, 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 to it? It's a very good point. They could. Because, I mean, for me, the downside, the things are at the moment, it's very dated, World of Warcraft, but at the same time, if people can't transfer their characters along, then there's not that investment. You're having to compete with a new World of Warcraft with other games, and they may struggle. So could they do that? They could. It's not the normal thing you'd expect to do, because if you're going to have a new engine, you won't have to make a new engine. You could buy a new engine. you know, from someone else. It's a bit like Formula One, isn't it? Some manufacturers make their own engines, some of them buy it from other car manufacturers. But you'd want a modern engine, a good new engine, at the very least. Now, would they then allow you to transfer your characters to it? They could do that, yeah. I think, yeah, they absolutely could. I would still think they'd want to redesign aspects of the world, new quests and stuff like that. They'd still want to develop a new MMO, but and new levels as well. Not like level, I mean, by the time it comes out, we're probably on level 150, aren't we? But I wouldn't have that. Have the new, you know, a more modern leveling system as well that takes account of the fact you expect the bloody game to last 10 years, 15 years and that sort of thing. But yeah, some way of saying, but you know, if you've got your characters already, we're going to let you transfer them. And it'll be not an exact copy, but work within the new system. But it'll have all the same achievements, mounts, although the mounts, of course, would change and all the rest of it. That might be a compromise at Halfway House. Ordinarily, I would think to themselves, no, that doesn't make sense. No one does that. That's not the way things are done. But Blizzard don't always do the things the way things are done, which is why they're such a well-respected gaming studio, I think. Next comment. This is to do with microtransactions. It says, I really think there is a storm brewing in the murky area involving microtransactions, loot boxes and gambling addiction. As gaming becomes more mainstream, society's gaze will fall upon the shady crap that game companies do to fuel players' compulsion to buy. I think so too. I'm surprised it hasn't already. I mean, that is the thing with loot boxes. It is taking advantage of people who have compulsive behaviour, particularly if they are vulnerable to gambling, because that's what loot boxes are. They're gambling. I was listening to a vlog by Boogie who was talking about this as well, and he was, I mean, I would use his argument as well. Someone was suggesting that in the gaming industry, of course they're going to back this up, that it's not gambling, it's the same as saying buying packs of cards for, say, Magic the Gathering or something. And Boogie made the really good point that it's not, because with cards, if you want a particular card, you don't have to just buy pack after pack after pack until you get it. You can find someone who has it and doesn't want it and buy it directly off them. You can't do that with loot crates. They're entirely digital. They're in the game. Someone else can't gift you an item with it because they're always... Unless, of course, they make it so you could trade stuff on the other side. I mean, Star Wars The Old Republic does a bit of that. Like, when you get stuff out of their crates, initially it's soulbound. It doesn't look like you can, but like if you leave it a day, well, the last time I played anyway, I don't know if anything's changed. You could actually trade it on the auction house. So there's that side of it, which softens the blow a little bit. But it still, again, takes advantage, I think, of people who have that gambling vulnerability. And it is something that I think... I'm not saying I would necessarily ban it, although I'd be tempted to want to. But I think government should look at it in the same vein as gambling. And whereas there are laws that like bookmakers have to follow to make sure that responsible betting goes on, also, you know, these companies should as well. Because ultimately as well, you're going to buy... So whether that means having limits on how much people can spend or something like that in a month. Because again, with like, I think, and this is a case of like modern, we're getting into sociological things now, with modern living, like in the days gone past when you paid something with cash, if you were going to buy a purchase you wouldn't normally do or spend a lot on something, you've got the physical handing over of a lot of notes that gets your brain to just pause and go, hang on, are we sure we want to do this? Whereas nowadays, when it's electronic, you're clicking the same buttons to pay $100 for something as you are for $5 for something. So when you're going and buying currency or something like that, or buying something on an online store, all right, the actual number buttons you put, but you know, it's the same, isn't it? You're clicking all the same buttons. There's nothing there that's getting your brain to think this is different to a normal purchase because you're doing exactly the same thing. So I think, yeah, the whole area of microtransactions is terribly shady, but I'm bound to talk more about that in the near future as well. Next one, this was to do with Demon Hunters. It says, Demon Hunters were even on the vanilla box art, so they probably even wanted them pre-BC. I don't remember them being on there. If someone would like to show me a photo, fine. I still have my games from the first few expansions. because I didn't get those digitally. I didn't see one. Someone can show me one. But that being said, that still doesn't mean that Blizzard wanted to make them back in the... I mean, what is definitely on the box art is a Yeti. We haven't got playable Yetis yet, have we? And I don't think we're playing on them. So just because you have an artwork of a character doesn't mean to say Blizzard are going, yeah, we want you to play these. No. But yeah, I don't remember Demon Hunters on the vanilla box art at all. Unless it was on the special version, which I don't have. Last couple. So, back to legendaries again. Recurring theme. Personally, utility legendaries don't feel legendary to me. Legendary should change the way my class plays or the throughput. Give the utility legendary to glyphs or something. But I'd rather not get a legendary, and I'm supposed to be excited that just gives my judgment and movement speed slow or something stupid. I think this is the idea of like Blizzard, because if you were to try and extrapolate from what Blizzard is saying, you might well imagine that legendaries in the next expansion won't have any throughput abilities at all. And I think a lot of people would think like this. Well, it's not legendary then, is it? It's nothing to get excited about. I mean, when it comes to excitement of legendaries, just this current system again removes it. Like, I was just thinking to myself, I remember getting my first legendary in Legion, and it was Ursoc, and we were doing, it was either normal or heroic mode. It wasn't the mythic one. We were just doing a farm run at the end of a normal mythic raid, and it was very exciting because you go through several steps as well. First of all, you get what happens. You know what happens when you get a legendary now. Big gold thing, all shiny. It's like, oh, good stuff is happening. When you get your first legendary, you've never seen that before. You might have seen it watching someone stream or on YouTube, but you've never seen it on your own screen while you're playing the game. And because you've focused on something else, the only time when you're actually hoping you get a legendary is when you open an emissary cache, because there's nothing else that's good in there. Whereas, you know, when you kill a boss from raiding, or when you're looting your mythic cache even, or when you're doing a dungeon boss or something like that, or opening a chest in a mythic plus dungeon, other places where you can get legendaries, you're focused on, you're doing it for another reason. You know, okay, it's nice to get the legendary, but there's another reason for doing it as well. So the same with the raid boss. So you're not expecting it, first of all. Then you see this thing, you've never seen it before. Then you look at what it is. Now, what it was in my case was a good one. So that was also nice. So that was actually very exciting, even though I don't like the system. Nowadays, because I've got all the ones I want, it happens and it's just like, you know, I open an emissary cache and I get a legendary out of it because I've still had more legendaries from emissary caches than anything else, just because I do more of them, not because they've got the worst chance, but you do more of them. And you know, it's like sometimes when you open an emissary cache, you get a curious coin, you get like order resources, or you get gold, or you get an item. And sometimes you get a legendary, and it gives me it doesn't raise my heart rate any more getting a legendary than any of those other items, because it's an item I don't even want. So yeah, there's two aspects to the excitement part of it. One aspect is the fact that we get so many of them that the excitement diminishes over time and it's no longer exciting. And the other part of it is just this fact that, yeah, if you know there's zero chance of getting a really exciting one, then, you know, if it's just a high-level stat stick, yeah, I don't think people are going to accept that. So I am waiting with bated breath to see what Blizzard's plans for them are. I would expect them to say something about it at BlizzCon. Don't expect at BlizzCon for them to go into detail on everything, though. They will just give us an overview of the sorts of things. And they will present it in very... in the sort of terms of very aspirational terms, as in what they intend the system to do, as opposed to the nuts and bolts of how it's going to work. They're not really going to talk about that, because they never do. That's for when open alpha comes out and people who get the first keys are able to actually report on how it's working in practice. And then the last one, just moved down to be the last one to do with microtransactions again. It says here, so I think that's a stupid business model, and I think they would lose subscribers because of it. The problem here is, again, we're assuming that Blizzard, or the people that are in charge of Blizzard, care about subscribers. They don't. They care about it's making money. There are things already in the game that lose subscribers that I'm sure the developers are not happy about. The fact that you have a lot of players who, let's say, their guild breaks down, something like that. I mean, I know this trying to recruit people. You see a guild collapse, you try and swoop in and pick out some good players. And the number of times I've come across a good player and they sort of quite like to join our guild, but they don't want to pay the transfer fee. for whatever reason, either just because it's too much or because, you know, I had one person say, you know, they didn't have the confidence. I thought they'd have done very well with us, but they thought to themselves, well, what if my trial doesn't work out? I've paid all this money and I'm stuck on that realm now as well. So the fact that we have players in these situations, and what these inevitably do, a great many of them just stop playing the game. Then maybe they'll start playing casual to begin with, realise that actually raiding is what they're going to do, but they're stuck on a crap realm. They can't get into a guild that's suitable. You know, they'd have to go too low down. It'd be too frustrating to raid at that level. So they end up quitting the game altogether. So there are already things that the game has in it that make subscribers quit. And I don't mean the sort of things because of change. Some players will quit because something changes anyway. Like, you know, some players really liked the way the game was in vanilla. But you can't have like that now because time moves on. So you always lose some players just with the passage of time because systems have to change, you know, inevitably. But I'm talking about things that are not there for gameplay purposes. They're there purely to maximize money, because Blizzard obviously feel they can afford, as in the people who are in charge of the money, they feel they can afford to lose some subscribers because they're getting more money out of the rest of us. In fact, one video I had in mind, which I may still do at some point this week or in the next month at some point, is the idea that, you know, sometimes people will say about the content they produce, like raiding and stuff like that, and they shouldn't spend too much time on Mythic because there's only so many Mythic players, and raiders in general is a minority of the player base. In terms of numbers, that may be true, but in terms of the amount of money we give to Blizzard, it may not be, because the more serious players also tend to spend the most. You know, people need to get out of this habit. Like at the start of the game, everyone spent the same. You had an account and you paid the same per month for that account. Then we started to get players who had multiple accounts, so they're actually paying the company more. Then we have situations now where there's stuff about, you know, there's realm transfers. If you need to change guild and you've got the funds for it, like if I want to move my characters across guild, especially if it was across faction as well, it costs me hundreds of pounds to do that. I can afford to do that. I can't afford to do it all the time, but I could afford to do that as a one-off every now and then. They're getting a lot of money out of me for doing that. Much more than a casual player just paying that, you know, whatever it is, $15 a month if it's, you know, in US or whatever it happens to be. And yeah, that's that. So yeah, they don't care about that. What they care about is how much money they can get. And if they think they can get away with a smaller player base, but that player base spends much more money, that's what they'll do. That's what they'll do. Now, for my money, I don't think they will introduce power loot crates. I don't think they would introduce loot crates immediately either. I think that might be further down the line. But what I do think Blizzard could do, and actually, do you know what, should do, is introduce many more cosmetic items. I think they should have more cosmetic rewards in-game than they have. Blizzard, I think, underestimate the value people place on them. The problem with power upgrades is that they're limited. They only last a few months. Cosmetic upgrades will last for years, as long as the game will last, because they're there forever. And they need to put much more effort into that. And then what would happen if you massively expand on the cosmetic rewards in-game, you can also increase the number of exclusive, online store exclusive cosmetic things as well. People won't be able to complain about it because it's cosmetic, but it's there and there's enough people who will pay it to swell the coffers of Blizzard even more. So that's my thoughts on that. And that's the end of this week's mailbox. I'll do this each week, of course, trawl through the old comments there. So thanks very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share for further content. Check out my other videos. And until next time, I'll see you later.